So tech alone won't drive growth. Your culture will.
It won't be technology. It will be the humanology. If you want to grow your team, you have to also help them change their mindset. And it's not AI that's going to kill your company. It's your culture that's going to kill your company.
So tech alone won't drive growth. Your culture will. Today on Heartbeat, Tulio Siragusa shows CIOs how to fuse AI and emotional intelligence into purpose-driven engines that unlock billions in revenue. The founder and advisor and architect, best-selling author, and AI 2030 org ethical AI champion, he'll share a 3-step playbook on how human-centric transformation can take place. So let's rewire leadership. Here's Tulio. Thank you so much for joining.
It's a pleasure to be here, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So let's just start at a high level. You've built your career on blending innovation and emotional intelligence. How did you come to this intersection?
Over almost 4 decades, what I've come to learn is the importance that people play in everything. Back in the 80s, we always talked about people, process, and systems. And somehow we had more attention on the people back then. And then over the years, as the technology evolved and became faster and more democratized, we focused a little bit more on process and systems. But the people have always played the most significant role, in my opinion. And when you focus on the people and the culture, you get that right, then the technology or the systems and the processes becomes a multiplier. But you can't get to the multiplier without first enabling the right culture. And so over the years, I've always made sure I blended cutting edge technology to give us a competitive advantage, but focus on the people. And that's one of the reasons I fell in love with design thinking, because it's rooted on the pillar of design thinking is empathy. And there's nothing more human than showing empathy and being empathetic. And so leveraging that has become, I would say, my secret sauce to creating an environment where people work and operate as friends. You have a lot of companies that talk about, we're a family here. And I'm like, why would you want to have a family model? Some members of your family are dysfunctional. You don't really want to spend a lot of time with them, but you have to, and you didn't get to choose them. But your friends, you actually get to choose them. And so the model that I strive for is one where we support each other, we celebrate each other, and we call each other out when we're falling off track, which is the pillars of really good friends. And so if you can create that kind of culture, then, you argue to get to the truth the way friends would, instead of being competitive with each other or looking over your shoulder. That's just room for toxicity. So I'm making my point and my mission to ensure that there's connection that's happening, connection over efficiency. I often say, don't sacrifice relationship over efficiency. And we live in a time of technology where efficiency can easily take us down this path of it's easy and quick to do, and we can avoid the relationships altogether sometimes. But I think that's a mistake. That's how I try to blend the two, and it's a balance.
Thank you for that. So where's empathy learned? Is it taught? Is it something that is derived from family, from your work environment, from your upbringing? Like, where do those who have really good EQs or empathy quotients, how is it achieved?
That's a really great question. Some people have it because it's been modeled for them. So you could say they're not really born with it, but it's been modeled for them from an early age. So it becomes natural to be empathetic. And some people have developed it through the trials and tribulations of life, through experiential scenarios that have put them in a place of understanding what it's like to maybe have challenges or to overcome challenges. So they're able to show empathy for others in those scenarios. And then there's those who might struggle with it. And one of the things that has worked well for those who struggle with it in my coaching work is encouraging them to volunteer their time. Go do something that has nothing to do with you, that puts you outside of yourself, to be of service to others with nothing to gain from it, zero to gain from it, financially or what have you. But in that process, what they gain is the emotional strength of caring for something other than themselves, stepping outside of their comfort zone to do that, and activating that empathy. And how did I learn that? There was a time in my life where I had trouble being empathetic. I had become almost like a machine in how I could do things, very business minded, right? And I had a mentor that encouraged me to do that. And so I actually was challenged to volunteer at a place to help reorganize their storage facility. I'm really good at like spaces. It's like a hidden talent, figuring out where things should go. And so I was like, I'm going to go volunteer to help clean up, reorganize the storage space. And I put so much dedication into it. I actually created a spreadsheet with everything went. I went all out with this thing. But that is what I needed to create value that had nothing of a return for me. It made me feel good to do something. Then I heard the feedback, oh, this is so much better now, how we can get to things quickly. We didn't even know we had the stuff in inventory. So I learned through that process about caring for something other than myself. So it can be learned through putting yourself in a situation where you are of service to others and not to yourself. And once you activate that, and then couple that with some trial and tribulation, because we all have them at one point or another, you begin to emerge to understand that there's no such thing as mistakes or errors. There are just opportunities to grow. And you look at life differently. Your level of success isn't predicated on being perfect or getting it all right or just being ahead of everyone else. It's actually predicated on this idea of what can I learn and what can I grow from the experience? How can I grow? And you begin to look at even trial and error as just a successful approach to identifying what doesn't work. And so I changed my whole relationship with even my expectations of myself. I was very hard on myself. I expected myself to be perfect. And I realized, like in science, part of the success equation of science is failure. You discover new medicine through thousands of permutations that have failed before you find the right formula. So did they really fail, or did you successfully prove an hypothesis incorrect? And eventually you did enough work and enough scenarios that you landed on the right solution. So I began to look at life more in a human point of view. That's part of growing, is making mistakes, is learning what didn't work and pivoting and applying lessons. And as you do that, you develop empathy as well. So I always say the best gift that can happen to someone who's cold is a major challenge in their life. That challenge that changes their direction, whether it's literally like as extreme as a bankruptcy or some kind of an illness they have to overcome. Not that I would ever wish on anyone, but sometimes you're so disconnected from your humanity that could end up being a gift in disguise to help awaken this compassion, this empathy that makes us very human. So having gone through many of those things, my path was more like to learn to be empathetic. Not because it wasn't modeled for me. That's just been my path, but it can be learned intentionally. And some people have the gift of having been exposed to it early enough. Like my daughter, my youngest daughter is just naturally empathetic. She hasn't learned that from anyone other than just maybe it's been modeled for her.
I think what you're saying is so timely, and we're going to get into talking about AI and how that's affecting business and the role of the CIO and the executive leadership in businesses, where there's a moment where I think a lot of employees or people in the workplace are starting to question what their purpose and value is. And when AI was first mentioned several years ago, the thinking was it's going to come after the blue collar workers. It's going to be robots. It's going to be manual labor. It's going to be the things that we really don't want to do. And what I feel is really happening is it's not coming after the physical labor or the work that requires the actual hands-on, the plumbers, the electricians. It's coming after white collar work. It's coming after the knowledge economy. It's coming after the lawyers and accountants and the professional services where a client doesn't want to spend $100,000 anymore on a PowerPoint deck. And I feel that the CIOs or the teams that are involved now are really starting to question what their purpose is. And I bring this up because, as you mentioned, it's through those hard learned experiences where really we truly find out who we are. And I was listening to a gentleman by the name of Dan Martell who wrote a book called Buy Back Your Time. And he had a quote that just really hit me. It's, your mess is your message.
Hmm.
And his whole point was the things he grew up with, the tough times in his life that he was embarrassed by, are actually his most powerful stories. The most powerful examples of being able to help someone else because he had to go through it. And that by leaning in and helping out that single person or a group who are going through the challenge is where he really lit up. And I think that's where we need to start focusing on how we can humanize this new world we live in, because some of the functionality on our day-to-day is being either taken care of or is being minimized by the use of AI and the use of technology. And I think technology is an amplifier, but if we don't get down to the core root of who we are and why we're here and how we can connect to those who are either going through joy or through pain, we're not really providing the value we were designed for. And does that resonate with you? Do you have anything you'd like to add?
It does. Think about what we've done in tech. We've disrupted every industry, but for the first time, we're disrupting ourselves. That's what AI is doing. AI is actually disrupting our own industry. And as a result, we're like, how is my role going to change? What's that going to look like? And they're very good questions. And I think what's necessary is a consciousness shift. There's two types of folks: those who think things are happening to them and those who things are happening for them. So depending on which camp you're in, AI is happening to you or AI is happening for you. And so when it's happening to you, you're a victim, oy vey me, it's hard to see past the problem, right? But when you say it's happening for me, then you say, what opportunities can I generate from this? How can I evolve what I do? How can I make this work for me in such a way that I can reinvent myself? What next level things can I do that I haven't been able to do before? What capabilities can I tap into that have become democratized because of AI? So it opens up a whole new world if you're in the consciousness of that life is happening for you, not happening to you. And that's what AI is doing is amplifying this divide that exists amongst all of us. It's like we're facing this big emotional intelligence challenge of how we perceive life. And AI is going to force us down this path of making a choice. Either you're the one who's suffering because of AI, or you're the one who's going to use it in a way that benefits you. And that has to be centered in our thought process, because otherwise it's just a scary place. And once you do that, then you can realize, what's really my purpose? My purpose is to be becoming. That's what we're really striving towards, to grow. That's why the self-help industry is like $1 trillion. We have an innate desire to grow, to continue to become something more. AI is just facilitating that in a leapfrog kind of way. So it's an opportunity to revisit. In some cases, some people will leave tech altogether because maybe they had some other hidden talent or love for something that they never had an opportunity to really take forward. And now they've got a platform that can help accelerate things a lot faster and gives them an opportunity maybe to do a side hustle they couldn't do before because they didn't have enough time, but they use AI to give them more capacity or capability, and they can go down a path that they would have never done before. So I think it's being in the right frame of mind. And this is where emotional intelligence comes in, right? You're either a victim or you realize that things are happening for you. How do you take the bull by the horn, so to speak, and make something of it? And that's the key thing with AI. You have to find what to make of it, because otherwise you're just going to feel like your life has changed so dramatically. And in previous changes, we've gone from the agricultural age to the industrial age to the information age to really the gig economy and all these things. There have been years in between, right? The agricultural age, between that and the industrial age, it was 400 years, right? Between the industrial age and the information age was like 50 years. And then between the information age and where we are now was like 20 years. Now you've got AI was like 2 years, right? So everything is happening so much faster. So in the past, we had years to change and adapt. Now it's like in a vacuum. There's too much, it's too fast, right? So it's also challenging the fixed mindset, right? We tend to be very process minded. We get used to doing things a certain way. We like routines. We don't like change, even though change is the only constant in life. And so we get attached to certain ways of being. So what AI is challenging us now is to be a little more dynamic, be more flexible. Don't get so attached to things. Become more attached to growing, to learning. That's actually one of the best contexts one can carry. And once you do that, then it becomes exponentially opportunistic, not a scary thing.
It's interesting going through life experiences. You can sometimes see them in a rearview mirror and see the value and the wisdom in it, although it may not have made sense at the time. It reminds me, and I'm going to parlay these two stories. When I was living in England, one of the first interviews I had was at a pub. And I thought, this is amazing. You know, the Brits just know how to do hiring well. But I later came to realize that the media and the technology industry was very personal and very relationship based. And the approach they took is, are you the kind of person I can sit down and have a beer with or two? And you lower your facade and you really get to know the person. But there's great wisdom in that, because it wasn't about your resume or what school you went to. It was, are you a good person? Are you someone I want to spend time with? And that's a heart connection. That's an empathy. That's something that's much deeper. And the second point is, I think that there's a fundamental and a once in a lifetime opportunity for leadership who take it to look at the new generation who's coming out of school, we used to call them digital natives, and now I'd almost call them AI natives. They're fundamentally wired to think differently because they've had access to this since they grew up. And I worked for a company called Blue Wolf. They were one of the original Salesforce consulting partners. And the CEO, Eric Berge, did a really smart thing, which is he hired people based on merit of character versus their maybe technical background. Bain and McKinsey might hire the MBAs from Harvard and Stanford and all those top tier Ivy League schools and go off of that criteria, but they wouldn't really look at the person to say, are you able to bring a perspective that will help amplify the team, that will be a complement, that will allow us to have a conversation that no one else is having because you're approaching it maybe from a social sciences background, or maybe you have a degree in sciences that is completely unrelated to technology, but you understand systems thinking, you understand how things fit together. And so when you're faced with a problem, everyone else, the 10 other consulting companies are saying, here's our statement of work and here's our pricing. And you have someone else coming in saying and asking questions. It really causes a moment of pause for that business to say, I don't know why you're asking that, but you understand more in your question than everyone else does in their pitch. And so I think for those CIOs who understand that they can look past the resume, because let's be honest, if you know how to use AI, you can spin up a resume to match the exact job requirement and have absolutely no experience. And so relying on a traditional resume to get your foot in the door, I think it's going to fall away, because everyone's going to start to equalize and to come in with a 10 out of 10 resume, that it loses its value. But the experience, I think, is where it's going to be truly powerful. Yeah. I'd love your thoughts on this.
It comes down to, and that's, I think, the really good interviewers will look past that, a resume too. In the process of getting to know a candidate, I'm actually looking how they think on their feet in the moment, right? Can they solve a problem if it's just presented to them very quickly? I want to see how they're thinking through that solution. What are they thinking about? What's the reasoning happening real time? Because you can't type that into AI. You can't plan that. It's either genuine who you are or it's not there. So what I'm really looking for is, do they have wisdom? because it's not even knowledge. Knowledge you can easily get. You can tap into AI, you can read a book, you can memorize something. But wisdom is how you apply that knowledge in a practical way. And that's what you're describing is the person who can apply the smarts in a practical way, not just the smarts. Because that's the difference between someone creating a PowerPoint deck, right, that can't be implemented. I often say it's like you either go to the Guggenheim Museum, where it looks pretty, but you can't use that couch. It's not designed for you to sit on. It's not comfortable. I want something that's got a good design, but it's also practical, that I can sit in there and use it. So the idea is to look for people that can give you practical solutions on the fly. Hey, we're trying to solve this. And I've often done that. That's why hackathons are great, by the way. They work, right? But you could do a little mini hackathon in an interview. You could say, we're actually trying to solve this issue. How would you go about it? You don't have to have the right solution. I'm just trying to see what your thinking is around this. What is your thinking around this? And how they process out loud their thinking could reveal a lot about critical thinking, systems thinking. And that's going to be dramatically more important because we all have access to the same tools to solve problems now. That's been democratized. But how you apply them, that's wisdom. That's system thinking. That's critical thinking. That's a different mindset. That's what I'm looking for. Can they take the available information, which everyone has access to, and translate it in a novel way that can add value and it's connected to something meaningful that's human? As CIOs, that's going to be an invaluable skill because ultimately, if you fast forward to a very digital world, AI-driven world, what's going to be the competitive advantage then? It won't be technology. Everybody's got the same stuff. It will be the humanology, the emotion, the resonance that's tied into what you're doing. And that's highly human. So you got to invest in those skills and in developing empathy, emotional intelligence, the ability to be of service, can serve someone really well in how they think about solving a problem, because they're not just delivering on a transactional need. And that's the key thing. If anyone remembers anything from what I'm saying, most of everything we solve is transactional. And everyone can do the same thing. What you're trying to do is solve the need for an experience to evoke an emotion. And I often equate it to this very simple example. Let's say you're going for a job interview. So you're going to go buy it's an in-person interview. So you think, I'm going to go buy a new suit. Now you can buy a suit anywhere. It's just a transaction. But what do you need that suit for? I want to show up confident. I want to feel good about myself. I want to show up powerful, depending on what you're interviewing for. This suit is a vehicle for you to step into a context that's important on how you show up at that interview. So I can go to 100 different stores and everybody's got a suit. I go and walk into one of them where the salesperson says, so what are you looking for? I'm looking for a suit. What is it for? I got a job interview coming up. What kind of job is it? Tell me more about it. Is it exciting? What excites you about it? So how do you want to show up at this interview? I really want to show up powerful and confident. I got 2 suits I want to show you that I think are going to create that for you, right? So now I go look at these 2 suits and they're more expensive than everybody else, but it's no longer a transaction for me. That suit represents what I want to embody when I show up at that interview. So what is that person selling? The suit? No, it's just a transaction. They're selling you an experience, a capability, something that matters to you. And so I bring this up because in the future, in the very near future, anyone in technology, CIOs or CTOs, they're going to be able to differentiate themselves by being able to connect the human elements of what they're doing, the experiential impact of what they're doing beyond the transaction. Because otherwise you're just going to be another Me Too company. Everybody could do the same thing. Everybody has the same technology. It's all been democratized. So the human element becomes more critical. And so more and more, as people are adopting AI and more technology, they have to also co-invest in adopting more human social skills, empathy, caring, being of service, finding ways to elevate that, because those who do are going to have a competitive advantage.
It's interesting. If we look to wisdom, it's typically born through adversity and challenge. And pattern recognition is because you've done it enough times that you can see things 2-3 steps ahead. For CIOs and for leadership who are working with a younger generation, how do they instill this learned wisdom or pass on wisdom to a generation where there's no longer 20-30 people on projects of just learning on the job when it comes to IT, because you no longer need that level of people heavy initiatives to solve what needed to be solved like 5 years ago. How do you do?
This is a real challenging thing that more than ever is going to become a real issue, because you can hire a junior person and with AI level them up instantly. And so they're going to produce outcomes that are valuable, but the challenge with that is they're not going to go through the resilience of having to overcome a mistake or a failure. And the way I can best describe it, when you put a new platform in place, you stress test it. It's part of what you do. You stress test it to make sure it has resilience. So how do you create a model where your employees can also go through some stress testing so they develop resilience? Because it's a good quality to have. In an AI world, that's going to be a missing skill. So you'll have to create a way for people to be challenged and fail upwards to build that resilience. You have to be proactive and intentional about it, because those are going to be the people that can apply the technology in a very human way, because they're going to know what it's like to overcome a challenge and to push through. And that's a serious risk for the newer generation who have adopted AI and technology. They may not develop that resilience and that ability. And whenever something doesn't work out, it's going to be a real challenge for them. That's, I think, in those situations, creating a culture of service and finding other ways to contribute to society, maybe being more active as an organization with a purpose beyond the business that maybe volunteers time, enabling an environment where people can step outside of their comfort zone on a regular basis can be something that not only helps the company do good in the world, but it helps those individuals develop those skills, those resilience, those ability to overcome challenges, to care for something, to push through, that are going to serve well in business. This is why more purpose-driven companies historically do very well, because they understand that creating value beyond profits also helps the employees grow and become better human beings. So I think you have to find creative and proactive ways to do more of that with a highly AI-driven world. And that, I think, is going to be a real challenge. I don't know what the answer is going to look like, because it's a new thing, but I just know that you're going to find a way to let people be challenged.
I've run across a number of companies where they are resistant, would be an understatement, of bringing AI into the organization for fear of data governance, just compliance, that it's going to be misused. And it reminds me of a story that I heard where a school took the same approach to say, you can't use AI for anything. And what happened is everyone circumvented and just went ahead and did it anyways. And there's a famous video that's out right now where someone graduating from one of the top tier universities showed their final paper and said, I built this all with AI or ChatGPT. And they didn't really learn the intent of the degree because they used tools to shortcut it. And I heard someone else who was a professor who said, you can use whatever tool you want. And you need to now then, once the output is generated, you need to defend it. Meaning you have to understand it and you have to humanize it and answer questions and embody the information and tell it, almost present it back in such a way that's what you're defending. It's not the gathering of knowledge, it's the presentation of and the understanding and the synthesis and the synthesizing of that information. And so I'm wondering, from your point of view inside of a business, do you see more businesses empowering the employee to basically go out and do within reason to use and leverage whatever technology is available in the general marketplace? Or do you see companies being more resilient and almost more fear-based to say we're going to turn everything off except for maybe an authorized version of Copilot, which in my opinion is 6 months to a year behind everyone else?
I've seen both, but it's not a technology issue. This speaks to culture. If you have a highly collaborative culture, one where teams work together and take co-ownership of solving problems. So you don't have single hero syndrome. You have more of a team, a pod approach to how you're running your business. Then you're less likely to just have someone who does that work with AI and just be accepted, because as a team, you all have to get on the same page. And then you have to also be intentional on how you use AI. So rather than saying, can you create this for me? Use ChatGPT to challenge it. Tell me about what are the best practices in this? Is there precedence? How has that been done? Educate me. You now have a tool that can educate you. And then once you're learning what you didn't know, then you can synthesize and prompt it in a way that's unique. And then the outcome is still by AI, but you created the outcome because you fed what you wanted it from it versus just solve this for me without any critical thinking. So the tool can be used by those who want to advance themselves and grow as human beings by using it as a learning opportunity and then translating or converting the work into something that they believe in, or the ones who want to just take a quick shortcut. But you have to intentionally create an environment, and that's part of your culture that you have to create, where learning and growing is the key. This goes back to learning and growing. When we first started talking, once I made that shift that everything is about learning and growing, then that becomes the highest ideal. Because as I learn and grow, I develop wisdom. I can then synthesize ideas, and then the tools just help me do it faster, more efficient, make me sound smarter than when I didn't get enough sleep in terms of how it writes it. But that has to be intentional. And so organizations that are struggling with AI adoption, which many are, I think almost 70%, I think there's some statistic that 70% are abandoning AI adoption because it's revealing some flaws in the organization. Number one, AI works well in autonomous environments where speed and agility is key. So if you've got command and control or structure where everything is like rubber stamp, or you got to go through a VP or a leader to approve everything, it doesn't work. It's not designed to work that way. But if you invest in creating an organization where there's more empowerment, more decentralized decision-making, even without AI, I've seen 3x improvement in capability. I've seen a company with 30 employees act as if they're a 100-employee company because there's no silos. They work in pods, they work quickly. There's no, let's check with the boss. They decide collectively, move forward, they make decisions. They have a guiding star that aligns with their purpose, and they move quickly. And then when you have AI in that mix, it just creates exponential opportunity. But in many cases, it doesn't even need to be used. It can be used as a last mile resort. Let's just polish this up in a way that sounds nice. Let's use AI to help us polish this idea. Because some of the really critical thinkers, AI actually slows them down. I've experienced that. In some cases, it helps me. In many cases, it slows me down. Where it really helps me is when I want to finally take all my ideas and synthesize them and organize them in a way that flows really smoothly. It's excellent at that. But it's all my ideas, my work. It's not coming up with anything on its own. So you have to be intentional about that as an organization. So it's not about AI as it is creating a collaborative environment where people support each other and they're committed to learning and growing. And AI should be a tool to enable that. Once you have that commitment of learning and growing together collaboratively, you can't stop a team like that. They're unstoppable. You can't compete with a team like that either because they're curious. They have something you'll never get from AI, curiosity. And curiosity opens up novel ideas. AI has no self-volition of curiosity. It only responds to what you say. But humans have self-volition. We can imagine, create, think, dream, fantasize. Now imagine doing that collectively. That collective intelligence as a pod, as a team, can be exponentially more powerful than just one person going AI and automating everything. It just sounds clinically cold. And that's what's going to happen if we're not careful. And which is why a lot of companies are abandoning it because, this doesn't work for us. It's a transformational effort first, cultural transformational effort, before you can adopt AI in a way that can be built into your workflows. And then you have to treat it like another individual on the team that you're collaborating with, not something that takes over. Otherwise, you end up with digital overlords, which is not what we want.
Yeah, and as you said, I think companies are maybe getting to be quite afraid of what is being revealed and the chaos that exists inside of a lot of businesses, where when they try to speed things up and apply, whether it's automation or AI, it's showing the broken systems, the broken processes, and it's creating and turning a light. And I think that companies that are able to be objective and understand that together they win and that everyone contributes something unique and brings value to the table, otherwise they wouldn't be part of the company, are going to have a chance of taking a monumental leap in front of everyone else. And I feel that there has been a culture over the past number of years of fear, which says if you mess up, you're better off not trying than mess up, because you'll get called out, or you could lose a promotion, or you could miss that next opportunity. Whereas I feel if companies are able to almost celebrate failure, because it means you're trying something new. And I heard where a team had a failure celebration every week, where they highlighted one person every week who failed spectacularly. And it was celebrated. It was not to put the person down or to shame them. It was to congratulate they tried something new and they learned from it. And they had to share that learning and what they're trying to do. And those who failed more actually got promoted faster. And it was such a wonderful thing.
It's amazing. You create psychological safety, especially when the leader is the first one that says, here's where I effed up. It's like, it creates psychological safety. It creates an environment where growing and learning is key and number one. But you're right. In the culture where it's all about winning at all costs, which is many cultures, there's no room for failing. So people don't even try. And then they wonder why people are so disengaged. It's like, if I try to do something that's novel, I might fail and I'll get punished. So I do nothing. Versus those companies that celebrate that you actually took a chance at something that didn't work out. What did you learn from that? You learned an effective way that doesn't work. Just like science. We have to be a lot more scientific on how we run business. We really do. We know how science works, how you discover things. No one questions it. How many years pharmaceuticals take to discover so how many failures they go through? But it's built into the model. And the way they get investments is predicated on this idea they're going to have a lot of failures. And when you're building another company, somehow you make an investment, they're supposed to just get it right immediately. Give them money to learn how to get to the right place, just like science does. So I think we have enough to be a lot more scientific on how we approach things, which is also more human. It's like, we're not machines that are going to get it right out of the gate. And if you think AI is going to get it right out of the gate right away, you're wrong. It's not going to work that way. So you got to leave room to grow and learn. And when you have that, everything else flows.
Imagine the type of business where the leadership, the CIOs, the executive leadership would publicly share their failures on what they tried and what did not work, and to show that it's okay to push the boundaries, to jump off that cliff without necessarily understanding what's beneath you, and showing that safety of the organization's culture that supports risk taking within reason, of what it would unlock in a generation that has been almost stifled and told to not raise their hand or to not color outside the lines. I think that's what the real differentiation is of the US economy, is the unleashing of the grit and the creative problem solving and thinking that once was readily available. And I feel like it's been put into a box and the key's been thrown away. And I feel like it's up to leadership to take the role and show what's possible.
Now, to be fair, some of these are leftover things from the Industrial Revolution. In the Industrial Revolution, you had to be precise in your processes or people could literally die, right? So following standard, being precise meant being safe, especially in manufacturing and building things. So it was necessary to have rigid controls in place for everyone's safety. But we have continued that operating model into the knowledge age where that is limiting. That is not going to create safety. That just creates limitation. So we have to be willing to reinvent the operating model. We're still teaching a hybrid of that industrial revolution thinking in the knowledge age. So some of the failure lies with the educational system that continues to unknowingly continue to perpetuate a system that worked for that, but not for this. And the newer generation doesn't stand for that. They're like, that's ridiculous. Let's just work through, let's make mistakes and grow together. It's okay. So eventually I think we will get there, but it's painful. It's a painful process. And to your point, AI is amplifying how broken that is. And they're abandoning, but they can't abandon it for long because there will be some companies who have made the investment in their cultures who will get the benefit of AI and they're going to eat their competitors' lunch. So if you don't invest in AI, you're going to be falling backwards. But to invest in AI effectively, you first have to invest in creating the right kind of culture where AI can thrive. And that's the big challenge because that culture isn't taught in MBA programs. It's not taught in HR certificate programs. There's a handful of us in the world that actually know how to transform an environment from a command and control to a decentralized autonomous organization. It's a skill set and there's a process to get you there. And it doesn't happen overnight. It can take a year to 2 years to make that transformation, depending on how big the company is. But it's necessary. Just the same way think about like when SAP came out. Did you know 70% of their implementations failed when they first came out? Because I was like, oh, let's implement this. And it's like, you're going to have software run your business. No, you need to first adapt the model. The software can be customized to your model to help you run it. And the big four, big six consulting at the time figured out, we're going to go in and help companies leverage this technology by helping them do a transformational process first, create the processes in place, the systems, and they made billions doing that. That's their whole business model, was predicated on helping you adopt the technology that could work for your business, customizing the technology to work for your business, because initially they failed. And the same thing happened with cloud computing and other technology cycles, right? There's always this, let's do it as no, your business is not ready. You need to adopt and make some changes. AI is so dramatically different because it's not something you can just do in one department. It's systemic. So if you're the CIO, the big challenge is how do you go and help the CEO realize we need to go through a change management initiative in order for us to implement these technology? That's a difficult decision because you're expected to just be the technologist. So now what's expected from a CIO, if they want to succeed at adopting AI, is to play a little bit more of that business role, that HR role, that COO role, that organizational development role. They need to be the conduit, the champion for how do we align our organization in such a way that we can invite this acquired entity, almost like it's an M&A activity. We just acquired this third party. How do we integrate them into our business? There's some value this third party brings. The way they operate is different than ours. Let's make adjustments so we can take advantage of the synergy of this acquisition we just made. That's how good M&A happens from a post-M&A perspective, right? It's no different with AI. They have to think of it as like a literal, like it's like an M&A activity. How do we integrate this third party in a way that helps our business? They have processes that are better and faster than ours. What do we need to do to match to those processes and system? That's a change management thing. So if you're the CIO, now you suddenly like, I need to work with HR. We need to get an organizational design consultant. We need to make some changes to welcome this acquisition we want to make so it works for us. And that's a difficult conversation, but it's a necessary conversation.
And I think something else that you just touched upon when we were looking at the whole emotional side of things, it comes down to humans. I've worked on several initiatives now where the mandate was we want to turn our company and we want to be 60% AI driven, without understanding that for many, it's too much too soon. but there's a group of people inside the organization who are what I would call early adopters, or if you look at the traditional curves, like that first 5% who are the first to buy the new technology, installing the beta versions of software. They're okay with it not working correctly 100% because they just want to try the newest and greatest thing. There's an opportunity for executives and for CIOs to find those people and to create a skunk works, or to set aside time for them to work together to go and test this stuff, because if it fails, they're okay with it. From just their wiring, it's almost like that entrepreneur mindset of moving fast and trying, and if it doesn't work, picking up the pieces that worked and moving to the next thing. But by trying to incorporate that to the later stages or to the late adopters, which are really the majority of the business, I think you're going to create chaos because you haven't proven that it works. You haven't created a stability that is going to be an enhancement for them with a proven track record. And so I feel companies are trying to get everyone to do something versus taking a step back and really understanding the makeup of your organization and the team, and pulling people who have that natural curiosity, who are doing it anyways, and empowering them to do it.
And Mike, this is the key thing. If people actually looked at the common thread amongst the early adopters, they're called the early adopters, but what's unique about them? They're curious. They are open to learning and growing, and they're not attached to a successful outcome, because what they're attached to is to see something that they can learn that's new. And if it's successful, it's a bonus. Right. So how do you create more early adopters? It's actually possible intentionally to extend that mindset by shifting the way people think about success, to be more open to learning and testing and being curious. And through that process, now you get more early adopters because there is a threat to early adopters. They're not so rigidly fixed on the outcome, except for, I want to learn something new. I want to be the one in the know. I want to try it. And if it works, great. And if it doesn't work, I'll try something else. So there's something about that can be replicated intentionally with good effort. In some cases, it could require coaching, but in most cases, it's just creating a culture and an environment where people are willing to step into that. We have an innate desire to be becoming. When I co-founded radicalpurpose.org with a bunch of other self-management crazies, we went on a 2-year mission to figure out what creates highly engaged cultures. And we had a bunch of sociocracy, teal, Morningstar practitioners, different self-management system practitioners, as well as organizational psychologists that all collaborated in this massive global initiative, people from all over the world. And we landed on 4 key tenets, which happened to be the 4 key tenets that matter to all of us as human beings. Number 1 is the desire to belong to something greater than ourselves, which is why religion and politics are so big. Number 2 is to have meaning behind what we do, which is why we have families. We buy stuff, we build stuff. It gives meaning to our life. That's also why people participate in politics and religion. Number 3 is the desire to make an impact, right? People get behind in volunteer activism, or again, have families, build companies, entrepreneurs. What's the desire? It's the desire to make an impact. And 4, the desire to be becoming, to grow, to become more than what we are. These 4 tenets are innate in all of us. Now, if you intentionally create an organizational culture where you are constantly pulling on these levers with everything that goes on, you're going to have a highly engaged team. And you're going to have a team that you can't compete with them. You can't stop them because, how do we adopt a new technology? People like to learn and grow and become something more than they are. How do we present it in such a way that creates an environment where there's a desire to grow? It's about them growing. So you can't penalize them if they fail, because the ultimate ideal is to grow. And they can make an impact in the organization by what they grow and how they grow, learn and grow. And they're participating in something that's greater than themselves because it's a group activity. And it gives meaning why we're doing this, because we want to learn and grow and evolve. It's highly human. It's okay if it doesn't work out. We'll abandon what doesn't work. We'll adopt what does work. But you are going to impact which direction we go. It's not top down. Go make this work at all costs. That never works. So it can be done intentionally. This is why I created the Empath IQ framework, right? To have a systematic approach for companies to create self-awareness about where the gaps are, what are the hidden hindering forces, to have a system for collaboration, which is why I use collaborative OKRs and implement those. There's champions involved, a set of owners. There's collaborators and supporters and all observers. The observers have an opportunity to learn and participate in something they may have never participated in. So you have a systematic approach to get people working together, collaborating together. There's no bosses in those there. In fact, the leaders are encouraged to operate at a level of equivalence, just like everybody else, right? So there's visibility, there's weekly stand-up meetings, so everyone's got visibility, CEO and everyone. But the idea is to collaborate and then to identify what are the roadblocks in terms of thinking and mindset. Because sometimes you can have a great plan, but if your mindset is limited, you have to rewire. So that's where I put in neuroscience techniques in there, right? It's this idea of a baby elephant. It's tied to a pole as a baby. It tries to break free and it can't. And it tries for years and it can't. Then it becomes this behemoth elephant. It can break free like this, but it doesn't even try. It's not because it lacks strength. It lacks mindset. It doesn't believe it can. So if you want to grow your team, you have to also help them change their mindset, because where they got to today is based on a certain mindset. The way you want them to go tomorrow requires a different mindset. So we look, where are the gaps? Who needs help with some rewiring, right? And then applying empathy into this whole process. That's where the beauty of design thinking. Let's do it in a way that's loving and empathetic. It's not being forced or coerced. And then introducing this idea of two principles: no force, but 100% accountability. So we're not going to force you to participate in anything, but you have to hold yourself accountable. You're here to contribute. So you can't just bow out of everything. And that accountability now becomes the duty of the entire team to hold each other accountable. It's not just one boss that does that, because in a big organization, let's face it, you can hide out for months. But in a team environment, you can't hide out for more than a week. Your team will call you out. Hey, what's going on here? The way friends would do it. And then ultimately evolving to a place where you don't need bosses. It's self-managed, right? Bottom up. Everybody's driving towards the same things because they have visibility into the financials. They have visibility into the challenges the company's facing. And then people co-own those challenges. And they want to, because of those 4 tenets. So you just very quickly seen a 1.5 year transformational process that then makes it possible to bring in new technologies like AI and something else, because it gets integrated into this model of collaborating. It's a collaborative tool that adds value to the team, doesn't steal the team, doesn't fire the team. It adds value to the team. And if it's so impactful where the team needs to change their dynamics of what they do, then let the team make that decision. That's not just theory, Mike. I've lived it. I've seen it. I've been in it. It works, and it works extraordinarily well. But that requires a mindset shift, right? You've got CEOs that have gotten up the ladder that was sold on this idea that when you get to the top, that's where you want to be, only to discover in most cases it's very lonely there. And you got all this pressure. You got to make all these decisions. It's exhausting. Most CEOs have a duplicitous life. They have to be one way at the office, and then they get to go home and just be nice. It's exhausting. So now you have to rewire that you can be the same person all the time, because really what you're doing is creating an environment where you want to have people step into leadership. That's being of service. Be a coach. You don't have to be the boss. And then there's those who are like, the middle management layer, when I've worked so hard to achieve this level, I don't have that power I used to have. You still have power. You have the power to influence people, to impact their lives in a positive way. It's not the title that gives you power. It's your ability to serve them that gives you power, because it's not about creating a flat organization. I don't believe in flat. You still have a hierarchy, but hierarchy happens in that model by merit. The person willing to serve others gets followed. So you earn that following, not because you gave someone a title. That is actually true leadership. Most people have a title. That doesn't mean they're leaders. They just have the power to fire and hire and scare people into submission, right? As we rethink the whole operating model of the business and we move more towards a democratized approach to running a business, a freedom-based approach to running a business, that's where AI will thrive. You can implement AI in that environment. With that, it's always going to be a challenge. Which is why startups, they'll do a startup with 10 employees in AI and do $1 billion valuation because they can run their business without any issues or controls. That's a very tightly knit, agile environment. And those little companies could be a big threat to the big companies. So the big companies need to wake up because the change is coming, whether you like it or not. And it's not AI that's going to kill your company. It's your culture, your inability to be flexible and to be adaptable, to create an environment where people are learning. That's going to kill your company. You'll blame AI, but it's really the organizational structure. That's really my message. Change your structure.
Tulio, this has been so insightful. We've been able to wrap the culture to the changes of organizations and business to the world that we're now walking into. If people want to learn more about what you're doing or want to reach out to you, what's the best way to contact you?
You can just go to my website, tuliosiragusa.com. Everything is there. All my social connections, blog, how to contact me, everything's right there.
Fantastic. Tulio, I really appreciate this. Has been an insightful and very inspiring conversation. Thank you so much for joining, and I look forward to staying in touch.
My pleasure.
That was awesome.
Good?
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Enjoyed this deep dive? Hit like or drop a comment with your biggest Salesforce challenge and subscribe for more tactical insights. Know a CIO who has a story worth sharing? Tag them below or send us a message. We'd love to feature them next.